Hello, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the State of the Society webinar for 2022. I'm Chris Stelzig, I'm the Executive Director at VSA, and I'll be joined today, of course, by Dr. Jessica Ware, our 2022 President. Now, any of you who have joined us at this spring's branch meetings, this is going to sound a little familiar because this is a lot of the same information that we conveyed at our presentations there. But we really do wanted to make sure that we have an opportunity to speak directly to the membership and let you know what's going on. And one of the ways that we have done that, of course, in the past few years has been through our annual report. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the report and a little bit more about overall operations that are happening here at the Society. And Jessica is going to focus more on what the governing board has been working on and sort of the strategic directions that we're going. And of course, talking about the very exciting meeting that we're looking forward to in Vancouver this year. Definitely would like to start though by thanking our corporate partners, Bayer and Corteva AgriScience at the gold level, and at the silver level, Syngenta, BASF, and SC Johnson. Thank you so much for your contributions. That's what helps to sustain the Society and keep us on solid financial footing. Anybody who is watching this and has not yet become a corporate partner that would like to, please do reach out to Cindy Myers at the bottom of the screen there. We would love to have you join us at this level. All right, any presentation that's going to talk about the last couple of years would be remiss in not addressing the impacts of the pandemic, which has touched pretty much everything that we do. Now, on the headquarters level, what we've seen is we've moved to what we call remote first office staffing. And what that means is we have an office, and I'm here today. And in this office, we have space for everybody to come and gather when they want to. But we also have proof of concept that people do work well from anywhere. And so we don't require people to come to the office anymore. Now, operationally, that's going to mean that when we get to the end of our lease next year, we will probably be moving to less expensive office space, and that'll save the Society expense as well. The financial impact of the pandemic's been on pretty much everything that we do. Each program has been impacted in some way. I think most obviously that's been in the meetings department, where those of you who joined us last year in Denver, although it was a great meeting and really exciting, it was reduced in-person attendance. And we saw we were down about 10 to 15%. And it felt different because Denver is such a big convention center. We're shaping up well to have a strong meeting this year in Vancouver, and we expect to see that in-person attendance go back up again. And the other thing to focus on, of course, is we had a hybrid meeting last year and this year, and hybrid is more expensive. So it's the reality of the meetings industry, but we are all dealing with how do we make that manifest in an affordable way. Now, on the governance side, this was actually a little bit easier because our governing board was already used to having at least half of our meetings be done virtually. And it just meant that last couple of years during the pandemic, all of the meetings were done virtually. As with, I think, all of your probable work relations as well, it does result sometimes in a reduction in our ability to communicate effectively with each other. So we're delighted to be moving back to in-person meetings in a safe and socially distanced way, just to start to reknit those bonds that are so important to effective operations. Membership, we saw a slight dip last year of 2.5%, but we're already seeing good indications that we're going to be turning that around a little bit this year for 2022. And so I think that's going to be exciting to see how that comes up by the end of the year with our strong meeting in Vancouver. If you're not familiar with this, the ESA does maintain an investment portfolio, and the interest from that helps to fund our overall operations. And we had a really strong year last year with our investments, and as the market did very, very well. This year's been a little bit different from the beginning, and geopolitical events on the world stage have really rocked that a little bit. And I think that we're all sort of feeling that in various ways. Now, we're at the early parts of the year, and so there's plenty of time to have this start to shake out a little bit and build toward a stronger end of the year. But we are watching that very, very carefully, and we're making expense decisions accordingly. On the policy and advocacy front, Washington, D.C. is still mostly closed, and that's both due to the pandemic, but also to the effects of January 6th. However, we have been able to forge some new partnerships and really work on building some existing partnerships, make them even better. CDC is a good example of that. We have a cooperative agreement with the CDC for a program that we call Public Health Entomology for All. And I'll talk more about that in a second. but that's a good example of a new direction that we're taking this is for the society. And then finally, our certification programs. They are still growing. Overall, our certification numbers are still on the climb. The rate of growth has slowed during the pandemic, but we're also delighted to have launched our newest program called the Certified IPM Technician. And that's a program designed for the structural pest control industry to make sure that everyone in that industry has an opportunity for professional credentialing, whether or not they're decided that they want to attain one of our higher level certifications like the ACE or the BCE. A little bit more detailed on the finances. We did see that we were up last year by about $50,000, and we know that we have some long-term challenges to still deal with, and I'll talk about that in a second as well. I was particularly pleased with the year-ending number because last year was supposed to be an investment year where we invested in the future of the society by pulling some of our reserves into building mode. So we were expecting to be down by $350 last year. That was our budget. But with the swings in the market and the interest that we generated there, plus some careful attention to expenses, we were able to end up the year up $50,000. So in other words, a swing of $400,000. So that was great to see. Investments, we do still have well over a year's revenue in this society's investment portfolio, so that pleased about that. Our staffing is 18. We do have 2 new positions among those. In other words, 2 positions that have changed over. One will be starting in the middle of June, and then the other one will be joining us shortly thereafter. So excited about that, and I'll introduce them at that time. Again, remote operations means that we will lower our expense in the coming future, and there's a number of new revenue opportunities that we're working on, and I'll talk about some of these here momentarily. All right, about the annual report. If you've not yet read this or found it on the website, I'd encourage you to pause this webinar and click on the QR code there, because this is a tool that we've had, again, for the last 3 years that really helps to showcase the transparency that the board is trying to operate with, to share information about the society with you, the members. And it covers things like what you see here on the screen, the size of our membership and which sections and branches are, how they're performing. PI, of course, is still the strongest, strongest is the wrong word, largest section, PBT being the smallest. But we also have a number of members who are not currently in a section, and we're taking a long look at that, trying to figure out how do we help get those folks what they want out of the society. Now, one change that we made last year that I'm pretty excited about is historically to join multiple branches or sections, there was a fee of $25. Well, we did away with that. So right now, today, you can join as many branches and as many sections as you want as a member for no extra charge. So that's going to be an opportunity for you to explore the various branches and sections and see, where your work really best resides. The chart at the bottom of the screen, at first blush, is pretty promising because it shows that we're seeing increasing diversity at our younger age brackets. However, if you look at that same chart from about a decade ago, it looks a lot the same. In other words, people from diverse backgrounds are joining the society, but they're not staying. So we're going to be taking a look at that as well, trying to figure out what are we missing, how are we not serving the needs of everyone, which is one of our strategic principles, and make sure that we have programs and opportunities in place that serve the entire entomology marketplace. Right, I mentioned last year's meeting in Denver. It was a great meeting. Hope you were there. We did see that it was a young meeting. And if you look at on the chart on the left, the student members and the early career professionals together were about to double the number of the in-person regular members. So again, there's a vitality to the meetings that we're really excited about. And I expect that will continue as well. We've seen students becoming an increasingly large percentage of attendees over the past several years. Looking at our branches, you can see where each branch ended up for 2021. And I also included 2 other columns. First, 2019, just before the pandemic, so you can see the growth or decline that we've seen in the branches from the pandemic. And then also a decade prior, just to give us a general overall sense of what each branch is doing. Now, of course, the governing board and the society are taking a look at the branches just to make sure that we're meeting members' needs on a regional basis. And what we're calling that is the Branch Evolution Project. And Jessica will talk a little bit more about that as well. Switching gears a bit and talking about our publications, this is all of our pubs are really doing great. And every journal that we have that has an impact factor grew last year. And most of our journals are now above a 2. And ISD debuted at the 6th highest in entomology at a 4.771. So we're really delighted to see that. And of course, our journal usage is trending upwards as well. You can see that in the past 5 years, usage has pretty much doubled. And so that's an exciting trend as well. Now, the Pubs Department does have its own annual report, and you can find that in the publications section of the website. I've used this metaphor before as we're talking about publications, but I tend to think of the society's operations as an old table. What I mean by that is we have 4 legs of revenue that support the overall operations of the table. And over time, like any table, one of those legs has gotten a little bit wobbly. And for us, in this case, it's the publications department. Despite the fact that we've had this strong performance recently, we do know that we've got some revenue challenges that are coming. And you've seen this chart before as well. Here's how our publications revenue works. When we first signed with Oxford University Press as our publishing partner in 2014, they guaranteed us a minimum amount of revenue each year. And that's the yellow line that you see on the screen there. Now, additionally, they also guaranteed us a $1 million signing bonus. And for accounting rules, we recognize that $100,000 every year for each of the next subsequent 10 years. We're coming to the end of both of those. And when that happens, we're going to switch to a straight revenue basis. And that's the gray line. So I think you're all scientists. You can pretty clearly see what that means is there's going to be a drop in revenue from where we are today. This is not existential. And we've been aware of this for the past 5 or 6 years at this point, that we're watching the trend lines. And so we've been developing new programs to help counteract that and mitigate the effects of this financial bump. And we are not alone in our need to start to look at ways to diversify our revenue. Every other association leader that's out there is worrying about this same kind of thing. How do we build more revenue than our traditional ways of doing this? McKinley Advisors is a consultant in the association management space, and they said that the trend line that you see here on the screen is expected to continue for 2022, though those data aren't out yet. In other words, it's still a priority to figure out how do we diversify the revenue of the society, especially in some uncertain economic times. With inflation at the highest we've seen in several decades, and the stock market going through the wild generations that we've seen recently. Again, none of this is existential to the threat to the safety and the future of the society, but all of these things are things that we take seriously, and we make decisions based upon what we're seeing in the wider world outside of our own doors. What we're looking for as we diversify our revenue is not necessarily a home run. We're looking for a couple of base hits, ways that we can build programs enough to handle that couple $100,000 gap. There's really only a couple of ways that you can solve an operational revenue challenge. You can either grow your revenue, you can cut expenses. And the only way to grow for the future is always going to be growing revenue. So that's where we're focusing. The certification program is one that I'm pretty bullish about. And I do think that that's a good future direction for the society as we really help that industry and bring the scientific knowledge that's so important to the work that they do in structural pest. PACT is our Professional Advancement Career Training Initiative, and the GCAF is the Grand Challenge Agenda for Entomology. Both of those are programs that help spread the word of what entomology does. PACT focuses more on workforce development, and Grand Challenges focuses more on how does entomology make the world a better place. There are revenue opportunities in both of those that we are currently working on. Meeting expansion is another area. We know that we've always, a strong asset of the society operations has always been our meetings department, where we're able to put on these outstanding meetings that support the work that you do. So we're looking for, are there other opportunities to take that same skill set and apply it in other settings? And federal contracting, we have, as I said, a new program with the CDC that for $500,000 for the public health entomology for all. And that's been great for this year as well. And then non-traditional ideas. What's outside of our normal 4 legs of the table? What's a 5th leg of the table that we could consider? And a good example of that is the fact that, and this isn't super well known yet, but we all know that BioQuip was for sale last year, and ESA did take a look at it, wondering, is this an opportunity for us to protect the supply chain of entomology and also bring in some new revenue for ESA? It didn't work out. but that, so markets are efficient, and something else will come in to fill that need and make sure that the supply chain is handled. Now, as I said, the other ways to do this would be to cut expenses, and moving the office will help. That's going to save us a strong 5 figures of expense when we do that next year. And other than that, the only way to do it would be cutting programs. So I think everything that we do is pretty close to essential. So I would be loath to cut any of our programs, but everything is on the table if we have to. All right, I mentioned the CDC. That $500,000 contract in 2022 is likely to jump to a million or more for the next few years as well. So that's an additional support for the society as we do that. Plus, we're making a better workforce of the future in public health entomology. Now, not every program that we do generates revenue either. Some things that we do are because it's good for the society. A good example of that would be Entomentos. It's a mentorship program for students and ECPs from underrepresented communities. And there may be a secondary or a related benefit to the budget for that as we build programs that help keep members of the society. Thinking back to that chart I showed from the first page of the annual report conversation here, where how do we help build services that everyone wants out of the society. Better Common Names Project, of course, we're the spongy moth is our newest renamed insect, and we're going to be looking some more at other names in the near future, but that's another good example of how we're taking the work that we do and making sure that we're serving everyone's needs. And I guess that, with that, Jessica, I'll turn it over to you because everything else I've already talked about. So.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chris. May I have the next slide, please? So as Chris mentioned, we've been pretty busy. A lot of the initiatives that Chris has been discussing all involved, many hours or weeks of discussion on the governing board. The Branch Evolution Project, which I'll talk more about, our strategic planning and developing new initiatives are things that often require multiple rounds of conversation. And we've been working together as a group, and I'm really pleased to be part of this team. So along with Mariana Alen, who's the Vice President, and Jennifer Henke, who's the Vice President-elect, we have a lot of, confidence that we're growing the society in a way that really betters our ability to address big issues like insect decline, as well as equity issues and many of the other things that Chris touched on. May I have the next slide, please, Chris? So it can be hard to kind of keep up with all of the things that are going on in the governing board. There are, missives that get sent out in the email chains that go out for e-news. But in case you want to know more about what's happening on the governing board at any particular time, starting with Michelle Smith's presidency, we've been holding these events called Presidential Pop-ins. These are Zoom meetings that take place. They're 1 hour, free to everybody to attend. We've held 6 so far. And these are themed meetings where people can come together and we talk about something in particular that's of pressing news that the governing board is working on or things that we're about to start working on. So we've had a few of them that were, fun topics about, the upcoming Vancouver meeting in November. Branch Evolution has been a hot topic. Awards was the most recent pop-in that we had. We're going to be having another discussion about the Branch Evolution Project on May 25th. So when you go to the website, the NSOC website, there's a section for presidential pop-ins, and you can just click to register, and please join us. All are welcome. And these are usually pretty fun, informal conversations. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, one of the things that we talked about at the presidential pop-ins, this was a pretty fun one, was the upcoming joint annual meeting. And I can give you a little bit of an update about the joint annual meeting. This is a joint annual meeting because it's being co-convened by our society as well as the Entomological Society of Canada and the Entomological Society of British Columbia. And our theme this year is Entomology as Inspiration, Insects through Art, Science, and Culture. So this is, a strong scientific program presenting entomological science, but with a twist. So there'll be lots of opportunities for people to participate in ways that are creative, in addition to the traditional scientific content that you would expect at an NSOC meeting. This photo shows the convention center where the meeting will be held. This is the same convention center where we met in 2018, for those of you who were there for that meeting. Lots of glass looking out over the ocean and mountains, a really striking place to hold a meeting. Next slide, please. So in each of the sessions, the symposium rooms, as well as in the exhibition hall, you'll see opportunities where people have tried to incorporate art, music, poetry, spoken word, and what have you into their work. In addition, we're going to have a juried art show. So this is kind of a first. If you fancy yourself to be a biological illustrator, or you make jewelry or sculpture, you can. There's a deadline coming up in 6 weeks, although I can double check the time. And you can submit photos of your piece. If your piece is included in this juried art show, you have the opportunity to win a prize. So members will go through and kind of vote on the artwork that that is their favorite. This is a really exciting new addition this year. Next slide, please. It's got an animation, so one more, thanks. So this meeting where we're going to be convening is in Vancouver. Vancouver is Squamish territory, and this is an island. Vancouver basically is an island that's connected to the mainland by a series of bridges, so we'll be surrounded by water, beautiful seawall that you can walk along, very close to Stanley Park, one of the extra activities that's going to be taking place in the meeting. We usually have these extra kind of programming. One of them includes actually some work that we'll be doing in Stanley Park, right downtown. Next slide, please. These are just some additional shots of some of the gorgeous views of Vancouver. We're very close to the University of British Columbia, as well as Simon Fraser University. Another one of the events that's kind of taking place at the same time as the meeting is a chance to visit the Beatty Museum at UBC, which has a lot of really great entomological specimens and entomologists there. Next slide, please. In the NSOC team, I'm co-convening this meeting, as I mentioned, with the Entomological Society of British Columbia and Entomological Society of Canada. The program chairs are Dr. Carly Tribble and Dr. Phil Barden. Next slide, please. So at our NSOC meetings, usually what we're used to is that there will be an opening plenary, a bunch of great student talks on the Monday, some interesting talks on a Tuesday, and then a closing plenary on Wednesday. Well, with a big group of people kind of making plans for this meeting, we had a lot of names who were our stars we really wanted to hear from this year. We wanted to make sure that we went with our theme of entomology as inspiration, and that we heard from a diversity of voices. And so what we decided to do that's a little bit different is we decided to have plenaries every day. So for its twist, we have an opening plenary that's being co-held by Doctors Cassandra Extravor, Marianne Andretti, and Swan Gordon. We have Indigenous voice. Oh, actually, next slide, please. I think there we go. And these three scientists are leaders in their field, and they'll be talking about their work in the area of their science, whether it's beetles, whether it's bee genetics, or whether it's spider behavior, earlier in the day on Sunday, in a symposium where they're going to be paired with a speaker of their choice. And then for the opening plenary, they're going to be talking about their work in diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is something that each of these amazing scientists also have incredible strengths in. Next slide, please. On Tuesday, we have a plenary that focuses on Indigenous perspectives. We'll be hearing from Dr. Tara McAllister, who's an aquatic entomologist and ecologist from New Zealand. And we'll also be hearing from Michael Blackstock. You may have heard his name before because he was the artist that designed the logo for the meeting that we had in Vancouver in 2018. He's also the artist that's designing the logo this year. So the logos that you've seen with dragonflies on them, that was designed by Michael. So they'll be giving a co-delivering this plenary on Monday. Next slide, please. So we just announced that for Tuesday, we usually have the Founders Memorial lecture, and it is going to be given by Dr. Chris Beatty. Dr. Chris Beatty is an aquatic entomologist as well. He works on dragonflies, and he is chosen to honor Jean-Henri Fabre, who is a naturalist who also described a bunch of dragonflies, but he was a remarkable biological illustrator. So celebrating his life will be a really excellent tie-in to our theme this year. Next slide, please. On our last lecture, which also kind of is both the closing plenary and the Entomological Society of Canada Heritage Lecture, because they usually have a Heritage Lecture every year, we're going to be hearing from three brothers, a set of twins, Richard Cannings and Sid Cannings, and their brother Rob Cannings. These three brothers are going to be talking about their work in British Columbia, the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. These are aquatic entomologists who, Rob Cannings was for a long time a curator at the Royal British Columbia Museum. Sid Cannings still works up in the Yukon for the government, and Dick Cannings, or Richard Cannings, is a member of Parliament in the House of Commons representing South Okanagan and West Kootenay. So it's exciting. We're going to be hearing from a lot of different perspectives, and I'm really hoping that you'll join us for this meeting. Next slide, please. One last note, if you know anybody that is someone who you consider to be a rising star, early career professional, or a graduate student whose work that you feel needs to get maybe more than the traditional 10-minute talk, there is, for the, I think this is the second annual or third annual Rising Star Symposium, which is going to be merged with what Entomological Society of Canada usually has, which is a grad student showcase. And so these events are going to be merged together into a symposium that allows the people who are presenting to give a longer talk, so they can kind of cover more of the breadth of their research. This also comes with free registration and a cash prize. So if you know anybody who you consider to be a rising star or a graduate student whose work should be delivered in the graduate student showcase, you can go to the website and check it out, and please consider nominating them. So as Chris mentioned, one of the things that we've been talking about on the governing board is the branch evolution project. So some of the branches that we have, the way that they've been designed, Chris showed that map kind of showing the geographical regions of the branches. A lot of that structure was in place before there were cars, before there were airplanes. And that's fine. There's a lot of things that we have that work really well that we've been doing since the time of horse and buggy. But we, on the governing board, really wanted to ask ourselves, do we think that there's anything that we could be doing differently? Are there things that we could do that would increase student and ECP participation? Is there anything that we could do that could kind of make it so that all of the members in the society feel like they have a home at some of these meetings? What we know that from the branch evolution project in its early days, when we were starting to do some research, is that not everybody attends branch meetings. Why is that? Not everybody attends branch meetings frequently, and not everybody feels like they have a home in their branch. Next slide, please. So starting last summer, we had some focus groups that were led by a consulting firm, as well as we had conversations on the governing board. And all of these kind of came together to ask these questions, what if we had fewer branches? What if we had more branches? What if we met more frequently? What if we met less frequently? And there's a million ideas out there, probably an infinite number of possible ways that you could bring people together who want to talk about insects. And so our idea was really just to start the conversation. And what we've decided so far is nothing. Next slide, please. So we've really made no commitments to anything. Our goal is to gather information. Chris and I traveled to all of the branch meetings. And at these branch meetings, we held town halls. Town halls will be held at the national meeting, and they also will be held at next year's branch meeting. Our goal really is just to gather information. And on a similar note, that's what we're doing in general on the governing board for strategic planning. So we do have a strategic plan. It's about 10 years old, and we're designing our next strategic plan, which is going to be kind of covering what we think the vision should be for the society for the next 3 years or so. As with the Branch Evolution Project, the first step is really to gather information. So many of you probably have already done this, so thank you if you already have completed this. But you should have received a survey in your email, and it would have led you to a link that would have had a series of questions about what you think is working, what you think isn't working, what you think we should do differently, what you think we should keep the same for the society. These data that we're gathering for planning our future are all of our things that we're going to be using this summer when the governing board comes together to have kind of a strategy day and to develop our plan. Our goals are really to kind of honor the traditions that we love and that we think make the society what it is, as well as being able to be flexible and creative and think about the future. Next slide, please. So if you haven't yet completed the survey, it may not be too late. I think that they were going to extend the deadline by a day or two. You will be hearing from us. This summer we're going to be using all of these data, as I mentioned, in our governing board planning. And then in September, through the fall semester, we'll be developing this plan, and you'll be hearing more about what the outcome was of people's ideas and their creativity. And so with that, Chris, I think that's about all I had to add for my part.
All right, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you joining us, and look forward to seeing you in Vancouver.
Thank you.